I hope to meet you all in Bled and that you come to listen to my pieces and the pieces of the other composers in residence. Um, my piece for cello solo and my string quartet with harp that I wrote with a lot of heart for this festival, and I'm very happy to get to meet you all this summer. Hello, my name is Maximiliano Soto Mayorga. I'm a composer born in Chile. I'm currently living in Freiburg in Germany. My compositional style is a mixture of noise art, instrumental music, but I also do sometimes a lot of multimedia art, usually in collaboration with other composers. And also, I write a lot of music for space oriented, like for a lake or for a big space. But mostly my main practice is the instrumental chamber music composition. In my case, creativity and technicality are usually connected in the same point. It's not that I am more creative or sometimes I'm more technical other times. The technique in itself is usually the piece, the way creativity manifests itself. So I wouldn't say there is a balance as such. I would say I do have a ritual or a routine that when composing, but it usually changes from time to time. But something that usually repeats itself is that when I'm working more intensely, my sleep cycle switches to the night. I usually start working at 2 a.m. until 6 a.m. and then I sleep the whole morning, and then from 2 p.m., let's say, I correct the, what I did the last day, or I during the day I'm usually very overwhelmed by the other things, other problems or meetings or going to concerts. So I usually try to spare during the night when everything is silent to actually get to work. But this changes every time. So sometimes I wake up very early in the morning and I start doing sketches. Usually for the sketches I'm working in the mornings. But when let's say the copying work, the last moments of very minutious um, technical writing, then I prefer doing this during the night. Well, maybe the biggest challenge is how to find a living, it doesn't have to do with the composition process. Or if you ask me which challenges as composition in itself, yes, I try to ask riddles to myself. So if I get to see that, let's say in the last three pieces, I did the same, or I achieved a very similar result, or I started doing repeating myself, then I ask myself, okay, how can I change this? Let's try something else. And this can be every time very different. It's a very profound desire just to write. I wouldn't know how to explain this more than trying to follow this very special kind of desire that finds a place in the live music. it's not that I'm very interested in writing music to then listen it with headphones at home or online. What I enjoy the most is the chamber music experience, or the space where the music will be played as a collective. This is something that motivates me. So for me, it's not that art is completely separated from society. It's a social. Is something social in itself. I often met people who would tell me that they would stop composing because they had the feeling that it was not connected to society, that it was too much of a bubble, you know. But I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure. I think it is involved with society. That is, it just has to find its public, you know. It has to find its own public, and I'm not sure if the role of the composer is to actually find this public, but I think you have to hope that it will happen. Also, one part of me believes that it doesn't matter that there is no public that will listen to this music, that it will be always some kind of performativity in this process of listening to the music, but the music that will be heard is never completely the score or what I thought about it. It will be always deformed in the compositional process. I think it's very important, but the main problem I find with this is that usually it is co-opted by the market. You usually find in always one piece in the festival that is some kind of social critique, as some kind of performance or weird piece or something that is always not completely understood as music. When I ask myself, okay, should I take this social critique to the surface when writing this or that piece, always is the problem that, okay, but who will in the end consume this music? In the When I start doing this, it's usually the market that is interested in social critique, is precisely the public that doesn't want to take this problem seriously, and that when enjoying this kind of music in a concert, it's like saying, okay, I already did my part, I don't have to work on this anymore, I can go now drink some wine and don't change anything. In this sense, I prefer not to talk about it as an art expression. But it's not that I am completely opposed to this. I am constantly thinking about it. I think it's important. Okay, so I wrote two pieces for this summer festival. The first one is called Framed, for cello solo, and it's a series of miniatures that it's not variations in itself, but it's some kind of repetition process that varies. But there is not a theme in the classical sense of the variation. It's more of different perspectives on the same idea, and before all, on the instrument in itself. Many of the compositional decisions are extracted from the instrumentality of the cello, of understanding the instrument as some kind of four strings more than one instrument, and of two hands, one left hand that that plays the strings, that touches the strings, and then the right hand that has the bow, and these both hands are composed separately in terms of pressure, of speed, of the place where they are touching the body of the instrument. In this sense, I am always writing the movements of the body of the musician in relationship to the instrument. It's some kind of picture of the cello in itself. The second piece, the string quartet with harp, is much more slow-paced piece. They are 37 miniatures. Not exactly miniatures, but 37 chords, 37 phrases. I always wanted to write some kind of drone style piece, let's say. So a piece where nothing happens. But in the end, let's say I failed in this task, and this failure takes the form of this string quartet with harp, in the sense that it's not a drone piece, but it's a piece that I'm very happy with. Happy in the sense of I want to keep trying, and it's something I had never the chance to do it, and if it were not for this festival where I could simply write let's say whatever I wanted, it wouldn't be possible, because a piece of 15 minutes long is not so easy to program. To find a commission for today are always maximal 10 minutes, 7 minutes, but 15 minutes strangely is usually out of the question. And to do this kind of very slow paced music where maybe the first change happens in the minute number 8 or number 9, if you only have 10 minutes long, then you cannot do this. In this sense, this piece is very special for me, and very different of the very virtuosic style of the solo cello piece. Okay, so these are very tricky questions, because with time, the question of, okay, but when did my musical education start, is always a little bit different. I could say my musical education started exactly when I was somewhere between 16-year-old, when I started taking piano classes. But I nevertheless started learning for myself when I was 12. It took me 2 years to convince my parents to buy me a keyboard. My family, except for my grandfather, they are, I always call them some kind of functional, what's the word? Hearing loss, functional hearing loss, because they don't listen to music, they don't go to concerts. In this sense, afterwards I started thinking, okay, but nevertheless I had a small piano, toy piano, as a small kid, and I spent lots of hours alone with this instrument, and also with the bike. I was born in the capital city of Chile, and my parents didn't have a lot of time to take me to ride a bike. I had a bike, but the bike was in our small apartment, and in the end, this bike, I would turn it upside down, and I remember to play the piano and to play with the bike, and this sound of the bike was very hypnotizing. I must have been 2 or 3 years old, but yeah, for this reason it's very tricky, because of course, this wasn't musical education. When you ask me where's my early musical education, I was in a very private school where we had an ancient music ensemble where I played cembalo. This was already when I was 17. And then we had a composition workshop with a teacher that's very dear to me. His name's Nicolas Espinosa. And he would every week bring different scores and different audios where we learned of contemporary music in Chile, but also what was happening in Europe at the time. And then I actually got the conscience of being a composer was today also something possible. Before that, it wasn't for me a possibility as an idea. So yeah, then I started playing with the idea of studying composition, and well, it happened. Afterwards, I studied in the university in Chile, and then since 2017, I studied in Freiburg here in Germany, and already for a year now, I'm living as a freelance composer. This is also a tricky question because, yeah, my first encounter with, let's say, chamber music, contemporary music, was also around this time when I was 16 or something, where I would simply go to enter any concert that was available in the university without even looking at the program. I think one of these concerts was a very special new music concert. Afterwards, when I was in the composition workshop in my school, I would usually go to the festival of the university that was once in November and once in January, and that was 2008 or something like that. But it's a tricky question because retroactively, after a couple of years, we could say that living in such a noisy ambience of a capital city has an impact on the imaginary of the sound imaginary I usually bring in my pieces. So there is a very strong presence of noise, of the noise of cars, of the noise of the cars at night, of the of the of the one or two birds that sometimes I could find in the middle of the city, of the pigeons, let's say. A very noisy childhood. So retroactively, I could say, yeah, it is a nevertheless an influence. Yes, of course. I think it's very important. I think it's very important to let children be introduced in contemporary music, but more than that, I think it's very important that children get to write, to compose music. So write not in a sense of writing in a score in a piece of paper, but writing in the sense of encrypting something that escapes the spoken language, and to be able to express it through sound, through instruments, and through the contact with other people other than themselves playing the instrument. I think this is very interesting, or to let them work in a chamber music context of improvisation, even with very simple elements, very simple instruments, but to be able to share this very special kind of communication, of teamwork. And above all, I think the one of the mm, So you know, many people like to sell music as something that helps you in other ways, like musical thought helps you in mathematics, or musical thought helps you in whatever. Um, and I think there's some kind of truth in this, but not from the perspective of learning math or being more able to answer more quickly or to think more faster, but in the sense of being able to make mistakes, to being able to be in a creative environment that is mainly collective, and where the, the mistake in itself is not a mistake but something that is desired, and something that creates knowledge, and that that is accepted and integrated in the learning process. I think kids today are very afraid of giving false answers. They try always to, let's say, fulfill the desire of the, not of the teacher in themselves, but of the academic, of the school system, where they have to answer right at the first time. And I think this is a big problem when we think of creativity, because to think creatively is precisely the other way around. You have to make progress through mistakes, through experimenting and doing what's wrong in the. And I think music gives you this space very openly and very freely, and obliges you to work with other people. Okay, so my main relationship to Slovenia would be Slavoj Žižek and Alenka Zupancic, but I also know the Chilean embassy in Ljubljana. From time to time plays music of Chilean composers. I also know Uros Rojko, a composer that I believe is all, today teaching in Ljubljana. I like his music a lot, and as just like me, he also studied here in Freiburg in the 80s. I don't have the name right now in my head, but I studied one of his pieces for accordion to learn to when I was learning about this instrument. And of course, I know Drehocheva and Neta Subanch that are also in this Abeceda Institute. Abeceda, it was by chance. I usually spend one day of the week only searching for possible workshops or calls for works, and I thought this was interesting, and indeed it was. I was very charmed by the idea of collaborating in an online environment, and this week of workshop with Aveseda was very fruitful, and I got to fight a lot, what I enjoy a lot, and to discuss with other colleagues from all around the world. And I'm very thankful for that, and also for the advice of Drehocheva that has a very special perspective on the on critical thinking and critical theory, and how we what is the situation of doing music, what is music, what is not music, even when you're playing an instrument, etc etc. I So of course I'm looking forward to go to Bled. It's my first time in Slovenia, and I think it's a very big privilege to be able to work 5 days every day with an ensemble, and to be able to discuss and visit concerts, and